Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is my first video. Hopefully this will not be a disaster. I'm going to keep this simple by creating a basic to-do list using Python. So we're going to start with opening idle, which I will use for this video. I'm using Python 3.13, which is the newest as of this video. So we're going to keep just a console-based script for this. We need a couple of things. Actually, I'm going to list them the things we're going to need for our program. So I'll start with a list of to-dos. So that'll be a list including every item, everything that needs to be done. We'll obviously need a while loop so the user can continuously add to the list of to-dos. Then we need 3 options for the user. First option would be to allow them to add a task, allow them to view a task, and it's simple. Another option allows them to quit the program. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. We'll start with the list. That will always be at the top. Now you'll see why I'm using a new variable called flag. Here this allows me to exit the while loop by changing the flag to false whenever I need. And we're going to print out the options that the user can choose from. So now it prints out the 3 options user can pick from. We will want to ask for their input. So by using the input key, that will stop output and wait until the user's entered something and entered. So next, we just need an if-else statement. I shall fill them in a minute. Now you see we have if-elif statement, which will catch the user's input. So first one, the user imports 1, they get to add a task. So first we're going for another input, and we're going to ask them this for a task. This can be anything they want it to be. And we're going to add this list, or this input, to the to-dos list. We'll just add print statement there. So give them some clarification that the task has been added. So once it outputs task added, since it's in a while loop, it'll go back round to the top and print out again. So option 2 is to view the tasks. So it will just print out the to-dos list in a more user-friendly manner. So we'll just print your tasks. And next we're going to need a for loop this time. I will explain this in one moment. So essentially, we're using enumerate to iterate through the to-dos list and through each element or task in that list. And basically, IDX is the iteration number, but since we've stated 1 here in the enumerator, it will start the indexing at 1 rather than 0. And the tasks here is obviously just going to be the element task that iterates through. So from there, all we need to do is print out the number just to make it a bit more user friendly. So IDX is obviously integer, but we want it as a number. We want it as a string. So you got the task on tasks. And that is it for choice number 2. Once it's printed out the last task, it'll loop back to the beginning and give them the 3 options. Finally, option 3 is to quit the program. We'll be like nice and polite, say goodbye, or set flag to false. Setting it to false, it means the while loop will leave the while loop after this variable set. And since there's nothing else after the while loop, the script will naturally end. This else here, we just want a standard print statement. So now we've got the basics of the script. So now that we've got the basics of the script running, we can actually try running it, and I'll show you any debugging if it goes wrong. So we'll start by adding a task. You see, even though we've imported 1, we've got an invalid choice. Let's try debugging this. So you should know that asking for the user's input, whatever they input, whether it's a number or not, it will be of type string. Whereas in our if statements, we're comparing the user's input to a direct integer. So multiple ways to fix this, but we're going to convert the comparison to a string instead. This should fix the problem we had. Let's try again. Let's try grass. Task added, and then looped back to the beginning, giving options. I'm going to give another task. The dishes. Just whatever's come to my mind. I'm going to view what tasks we've got to do. There we go. Cut the grass number 1 and wash the dish number 2. And we're finished now, so we can exit. So now we know our script is working, but there's a problem. Let's try running again to view our tasks, but you'll see there are no tasks listed. That's because Python doesn't remember them for us, so we've got to implement a bit of a memory into it. So we're going to start when we need to add tasks to it. So here, basically, every time the user adds a task to the list, it's going to write this list to a separate text file. And then when the script starts, when we run it for the first time, it'll read from this file, which will practically give it a memory to allow it to remember the tasks. So there are a couple of ways to open a file, especially just plain text file, but we're going to use the most ideal way using with open. So the open keyword here, we're going to give it two things. First, the file name we want, which I'm going to call it task list, but you can call it anything you like. And we want to be able to write to it. So I'll give it W as a string. That'll tell it that it writes the list to the file. By using write, this will override and basically destroy anything already saved in the file. But for this, that is perfectly fine. So basically we've opened the text file and we're storing that as a task list. So here we've just opened and read the file, and we're just storing that in a variable name called task list, which we can access. So task list, the file, that's right. And we're just going to do to-dos. So we run that. We're going to let's stick with cutting the grass. So an important thing here is to name everything correctly, otherwise it won't know what you're on about. Try again. So here, see here, this is the next problem. When writing to the file, it must be a string, it can't be a list, no matter what. Which means we're going to have to do a similar method to what we did in option 2. We're going to need a new for loop, but a bit simpler than the other one, as you see. So again, task will just contain each element of the to-dos list as it iterates through. We're going to write task, and we'll add a special sequence here, which is a new line, which will create a new line in the file. So let's try again. So you'll see nothing different appears to have changed. It still says task added. But if we go back to the desktop where the file's saved, see there's a new file called task list. You should also make sure that this file operation happens after adding the task to the to-dos list. So with that mistake fixed, we'll try the same process again. Open it up and you see our first task is now written to the file. So now we need to read from this file when the script starts. We're going to do this outside the while loop because we only want to read it once every time the script is ran. So I'm going to do a very similar method again, but rather than using W, I'm going to use R for read. So now we need a new variable. We need to read each line in the file and have each line as a separate element of its own list. So tasks is going to be task list. We're going to use a new thing for files called read lines, which will basically just turn the tasks variable into a list and add each line as its own element of that list. So since it's a list, we can now iterate over it. We can just add the task to the to-dos list like this. And run this. I'm going to view tasks, even though I haven't added any this execution of the script. But you'll see we've already got one here. So let's go ahead and add a couple more. So I've added a few more tasks. We're going to quit and then rerun the same script. Let's try viewing our task again. Now you'll see there's a little problem here. You'll see there's an empty 2. This is because we have not cleaned the text that we've read from the file. Here, if we print out tasks, you'll see why it looks like as raw information. You'll see here, each element we're reading also includes a new line. So we need to go ahead and remove that from each iteration first. So one of the few ways we could do this is replace a new line with nothing, with a blank string. So here, I'm going to say find the new line in the iterated task, find that new line and replace it with this empty string. We run it again. And you'll see by replacing this new line with a blank string, when we run it, view new task, all clean, still remembers our tasks. And for this first video, that concludes this short little tutorial on creating a task list. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this will not be the last video I do for this channel.